and as he had borrowed his father's razor that morning to sharpen a slate pencil, the 57 canes were not all thrown away. But it was the sum about the cistern that convinced Edwin of the desperate need of finding the arithmetic fairy, and begging her to take back the present she had made him. It is not polite to ask this, but Edwin had to do it. You see, in the sum, the cistern had to leak 3 pints in 13 minutes and a quarter. But the cistern at home happened to have a little leak of its own already, where Edwin had tried his new drill on it, and the 2 leaks together managed so well that when Edwin got home he found water dripping from all the top bedroom ceilings, and the staircase was a sort of Niagara. It was very exciting, but when the plumber came he let Edwin's father know all about the little drilled hole, and Edwin got the credit of the leak in the sum, which was much larger and most unfair. His father spoke to Edwin about this matter in his study, and it was then that Edwin saw that he must put an end to the sums that came true. So he went up to his bedroom with his candle and his arithmetic book. Directly he put the candle on the chest of drawers, a big splash of water fell right on the flame and it went out. He had to go right downstairs to get another light. Then he put the candle on the dressing table. Splash, out it went. Chair, splash, out. At last he got the candle to stay alight on the wash-hand stand, which was, by some curious accident, the only dry place in the room. Then he opened his book. Somewhere in the book he knew there must be something that would fetch the fairy. He said the multiplication table up to 9 times. After that, as you know, the worst is over. But no fairy appeared. Then he read aloud the instructions for working the different rules, including the examples given. There was no result. Then he called to the fairy, but she did not come. Then he tried counting. Then counting and calling mixed with other things, like this: "Oh, good fairy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, do come and help me. 8, 9, 10, 11. Beautiful, dear, kind, lovely fairy. 9 9s are 81. Dear fairy, do come. 7,200,659. I will always love you if you will come to me now. 3/7 of 5/9 of 5/12 of 16/50. You were so kind the other day. 2 and 2 are 4, and 3 are 7. Do come now. You've no idea what an awful mess you've got me into. 7 9s are 63, though I know you meant it kindly. Dear fairy, 13 from 37 leaves 24. Do come and see what a hole I'm in. Do come, and the product will give you the desired result." Edwin stopped, out of breath. He looked round him for the fairy. But his room, with the water dripping from the roof and the wet towels and basins on the floor, was not a fairy-like place. Edwin saw, with a sigh, that it was no go. "I'll have another go in prep tomorrow," he said. This he did. The mathematical master was pleased with himself that day, because he had succeeded in preventing his best boy from yielding to the allurements of the headmaster and the classical side. Of course, his class knew at once what kind of temper the mathematical master was in. You know we always know that. And Edwin ventured to ask that the examples that day might be about a model steam engine. "Only one, sir, please," he was careful to explain. The master kindly consented, and by great good fortune the example did not deal with a faulty boiler, nor with any other defect, but concerned itself solely with the model engine's speed. So Edwin knew, when he had worked his sum, exactly what pace the model engine he would find at home would be good for. He worked the sum right. Then he put his head into his desk and began again. "Oh, good fairy, if a sum of £4,700 is to be divided between A, B, and C, do come and help me. 3/10 of a pound is 6 shillings, dear fairy. 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, lovely fairy," and so on. But no fairy came, and Simpkins minor whispered, "What are you chunnering about?" and stuck a pin in Edwin's leg. "Can't you do the beastly example?" Then, quite suddenly, Edwin knew what he had to do. He made up an example for himself. This was it. if 7,535 fairies were in my desk at school, and I subtracted 710 and added 1,006, and the rest flew away in 783 equal gangs, how many would be left over in the desk? When he had worked it, the answer was 1. Very quickly he opened his desk again, and there was the arithmetic fairy, looking more lovely than ever, in a rich gown of indices, lined with surds, that fell to her feet in osculating curves. In her hand, like a sceptre, shone the starry glory of the binomial theorem, but her eyes were starrier still. She smiled, but her first words were severe. "You careless boy," she said, "why can't you learn to be accurate? It's the merest chance you got me. You should have stated your problem more clearly, and you should have said 7,000 arithmetic fairies. Why, suppose you had found one fairy on your desk, and it had been the grammar fairy or the football fairy. What would you have done then?" "Is there a football fairy?" Edwin asked. "Of course. There's a fairy for everything you have to learn. There's a patience fairy, and a good temper fairy, and a fairy to teach people to make bread, and another to teach them to make love. Didn't you really know that?" "No," said Edwin, "but I say, look here." "I am looking," she said, fixing her bright eyes on Edwin's goggling ones, exactly as at their first meeting. "No, I mean, oh, I say," he said. "So I hear," she said. "No, but no kid," said he. "Of course there isn't any kid," said she. "Dear, kind, pretty fairy," Edwin began again. "That's better," said the fairy. "Didn't you hear all I was saying to you yesterday, when the water was dripping from the ceiling all over the room?" "From 19 several spots. Of course I did." "Well then," said Edwin, "you mean that you're tired of having things happen when you do your sums correctly. You prefer the old way." "Yes, please," said Edwin, "if you're sure you don't mind. I know you meant it for kindness, but, oh, it is most beastly when you get into the thick of it." He was thinking of the elephants, I fancy. "I only did it to please you," said the fairy, pouting. "I'll make everything as it was before. Does that please you? And there's your third wish. You know we always give 3 wishes. It's customary in the profession. What would you like?" Edwin had not attended properly to this speech, so he had only heard "as it was before," and then "what would you like?" So he said, "I should like to see you again some day." The arithmetic fairy smiled at him, and her beauty grew more and more radiant. She had not expected this. "I made sure you would ask for a pony, or a cricket bat, or a pair of white mice," she said. "You shall see me again, Edwin. Goodbye." And the bright vision faded away in a dim mist of rosy permutations. When Edwin got home, he heard that a model engine had been discovered in the larder, and had been given to his younger brother. There are some wrongs, some sorrows, to which even a pen like mine cannot hope to do justice. Edwin is now a quiet-looking, grown-up person in a black frock coat, and his hair is slowly withdrawing itself from the top of his learned head. I suppose it feels itself unworthy to cover so great a brain. The fairy has been with him, unseen, this many a year. The other day he saw her. He had been senior wrangler, of course, that was nothing to Edwin, and he was astronomer royal, but that, after all, he had a right to expect. But it was when he took breath from his researches one day, and suddenly found that he had invented a brand new hypernebular hypothesis, that he thought of the fairy, and thinking of her, he beheld her. She was lightly poised above a pile of books based on Newton's Principia, and topped with his own latest work, the fourth and further dimensions. He knew her at once, and now he appreciated more than ever in his youth the radiance of her eyes and of her wings, for now he understood it. "Dear, beautiful fairy," he said,